What's up, everyone? It's a knife style here, and today I'm going to be doing my first impressions on the Reeve knives Umnumzaan. And this is a knife that ever since I picked up my large Sabenza 21 right here, I knew that I wanted an Umnumzaan and I would eventually get one, and so I'm glad that I did. That's one funny thing about Reeve knives, is that you're never just gonna get one. I highly doubt that you're gonna get one and be set for life. I mean, maybe there's someone who is, but yeah, here's a quick size comparison between them. As you can see, very similar sizes. So I will be doing a comparison between the Sabenza and the Umnumzaan. I've kind of been putting it off because I don't really want to do that video because I know it's going to be very close. I think I already know which one I kind of like more, but it still is. That's going to be a very fun video and a very good one, I think. So let's get started on my first impressions, just what I've been thinking about this knife so far. So I actually, if you're curious, I picked this up new from Knives Ship Free. Reeve Knives, recently they did another batch of Umnumzaan, so they have been filtering in and out of stock. They kind of are pretty scarce because a lot of people really want them right now. They're not that hard to find on the secondary, or I at least follow the Reeve buy, sell, and trade. So if you're interested, I'd suggest look over there on that Facebook group. And then also Knives Ship Free. Usually I feel like that's a retailer that a lot of people don't pay as much attention to. And so sometimes they'll just be sitting in stock over there and nobody will really know. So I would suggest go looking at them, seeing if they have it right there. I honestly don't know if they do right now, but I'd suggest at least checking that out. Anyway, for the looks of this knife, this was a knife that like when I first pulled it out of the box, I was just amazed at how good it looks. This looks very cool, and in my opinion, it looks a lot cooler than just like your basic Sabenza or something like that. And just what makes this knife look cool, one, I really like this milling pattern on the titanium. I think that it's simple, but it's effective. You know, not that this knife would look bad if it wasn't there, but I still like the design. I like it because it's just more than just plain titanium handles like there is on the Sabenza, so I think that is pretty cool. Also, the stonewash blade on this, I mean, it's the best finish, in my opinion, out there. And also combined with this satin-ish flat, I think that contrasts very well. Kind of like the little top swedge on the Insingo grind. But this double harpoon, just looking at it, that looks so good. I really feel like I like this blade shape. Even though I don't need a double harpoon, of course, I'm not really fighting anybody or anything, but yeah, it's just such a good looking blade. I really like this blade shape, and even though it's kind of complicated and full of a lot of different patterns, I think that it still has a very simple, just plain old drop point blade shape. I'm wiping off this blade because I don't know, my fingerprints are getting all over it. I don't really know why, but yeah, this knife overall looks really good. One of my favorite looking Reeve knives that there is. Not that the Sabenza looks bad, it just looks more like a basic average knife. This looks a little bit out there. Also, the pivot, we'll talk about that a little bit more when I talk about hardware, I guess, but it's a huge pivot and it looks really good. So for the next part, the blade of this knife, this is an S35VN blade, drop point blade shape, hollow ground. It has the deep hollow grind similar to a Sabenza, and that is what I really like about the Umnumzaan, because I don't know if it gets thinner behind the edge than the Inkosi, but at least it probably cuts a little bit better, just because when you're cutting through materials, it is not rubbing against this hollow grind as much as it would on a flat grind, and so it passes through materials a lot easier. And that's why these Reeve knives, even though they're around that 19,000s, 20,000s behind the edge mark, they still cut better than your average I don't know, like your average Spyderco that's 20,000s behind the edge, just because they have that deep hollow grind and it makes it pass through materials a lot better. Would I like this knife to be a lot thinner behind the edge, like 10,000s to 15,000s? Yes, I would really like that, but you got to think about it. They're building these knives to stand the test of time, stand up to a bunch of hard use, and a deep hollow grind that's 10,000s behind the edge. While I think a lot of people probably think it's more fragile than it really is, it still is a lot more fragile than 20,000s behind the edge, because that thinness has to carry up to about like right here before it actually starts thickening up, and that's the advantage of a hollow grind. You can sharpen it more and more. So that's why I think that this knife is not thinner behind the edge, but still, compared to like hinders, and I guess striders are pretty thin too. I haven't really handled them, but it's one of those things where Chris Reeve knives, while they are very useful for hard use, they are also very useful for EDC, and that's why I honestly still own this small Sabenza, because I immediately just bought this to use a bunch for EDC, and I really have, and I honestly haven't noticed that it's 20 thousandths behind the edge. Usually when a knife is 20 thousandths behind the edge, I am like, oh yeah, it's just not the best cutter in the world, but it still is fine. And with the small Sabenza, it honestly feels like it's thinner because of that hollow grind and because I dropped the angle when sharpening. So I think I've said enough about the blade. Oh, I guess maybe you guys might be curious. Oh, is he going to mention that he wants an Insingo blade on the Umnumzaan? The thing is, if you guys don't know, if you're new to my channel watching this, the Insingo blade is my favorite blade shape that there is. I just feel like that it's very useful, and very useful for all the EDC tasks that I do, and it also looks very good. And so yeah, for those reasons, the Insingo blade is my favorite. And would I like an Insingo on the Umnumzaan? I guess so. I can't really picture it. I don't really know why, but I do really like this double harpoon, and the drop point, it's not like a drop point blade shape is bad for EDC. You still have a lot of accessible flat for a lot of good cutting just with that flat, and the tip is, yeah, it's not the best for if you're going to do like detail work like that, because you got to raise your wrist up so much. But overall, this blade shape isn't bad for EDC, and just the simple drop point blade shape is probably my second favorite compared to the Insingo blade. But yeah, overall, I'm a very big fan of this blade. One interesting thing about this plunge grind is it doesn't, or like this choil area, it doesn't look to be as good as the Sabenza. It still is like miles better than a lot of different companies, but still it isn't as deep of a plunge. Let me compare that really quickly. Sorry, I keep pulling this knife out. But yeah, this is just kind of like a 45-degree angle right here, and this is very, very nice to sharpen. While the Umnumzaan, it's kind of more of a curve like this, kind of radius, and it looks like that maybe after a lot of sharpenings, you will start to get a smile right there. Not that big of a deal, just one thing that I at least noticed. I'll have to update you after my first sharpening and see what I have to say about that a little bit more. Anyway, for the next category, fit and finish and lockup, I don't really feel like I'd have to touch up on this, but I did take it apart once. I took the lanyard off. That's usually what I do with my Sabenzas, or no, with my Chris Reeve knives, just because a lot of people cut the lanyard off and keep that little pin in there. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't do it because it's not like that pin is really saving or losing the knife aesthetically for me, and so I just take it off because pretty much all of my knives have a lanyard hole in them, so I'm not really opposed to it. But yeah, this knife is perfectly centered. Obviously, no blade play, no up and down, and the lockup is very good. This has the ceramic detent ball interface. I think the Umnumzaan, was that one the first that had it, or did the Sabenza 25 have it? I don't know, because I just got into Chris Reeve knives this year, and so my history on them isn't the best. But if you do know, please let me know if the Umnumzaan was the first to have this ceramic ball lock interface. But we are locking up, at least looking at this, it looks to be about 60%, but it's probably a little bit earlier because the ceramic detent ball is actually probably interfacing with the blade a little bit farther back than the very corner of that titanium. Just something to keep in mind. Also, I really like the external blade stops on this, even though obviously I don't need it, because what it really is the best for is for horizontal stability when prying or something, and I don't really need that in a knife. But I do like it because with knives that have external blade stops, you have no issues whatsoever with horizontal blade play. Keep in mind, Chris Reeve knives in general, you don't have issues with horizontal blade play, but it's still something that I like to address. For example, this ZT0562, it has external stops, and this action really feels like it should be it honestly just feels like it should have blade play to it, but because it has external stops, there is just basically, it will have less blade play because these are farther up and therefore provide more stability, I guess, side to side, because it's closer to the end of that knife when you grab it and move it like that. So keep that in mind. That's why I like external blade stops. So ease of disassembly with this knife, it was pretty easy because just a pivot and a body screw. There is no stop pin right there because there are the external blade stops that contact this little divot up here, and that's what keeps the blade from going this way when it is locked up. And Also the external blade stops contact right here, and that keeps it from closing more down on the knife. As you can see, let me show you. There is that little mark right there where you can see that little shiny spot, and that is where the external blade stops hit. So taking this thing apart, really just the pivot and the body screw, and this is a free spinning pivot, and so they give you two, I believe they are 1/8" Weehaw Allen tools, which are really nice and I really do like, and you are probably never going to strip out this pivot. It is just very, very high quality, very thick pivot. Let me try and get a comparison between just the Sebenza pivot. This thing is huge. I don't really need it, but I think it is a pretty cool feature on the Umnumzaan. And yeah, that thing, it has some weight to it. If you take it apart and feel it, it is very beefy. This is just kind of like your normal Chris Reeve stop pin screw, but it does have a nice hourglass, not backspacer, what's the term, standoff. And yeah, I really do like the construction of the Umnumzaan. Very simple. I think that it just looks so clean looking at it like this because there's only one standoff and there is no stop pin or anything. It's just a very simple knife, and that's one thing I like about Chris Reeve knives is they're very simple but still very effective, and they seem to have everything, you know, thought out and under control. So I really do like that about Chris Reeve knives, and it really shows on the Umnumzaan. For the next category, the ergonomics of this knife. This is one where I was very impressed because in this basic hammer grip here, no hot spots feels very good. And also this double harpoon actually does serve some functional benefit because this little sweep up right here, you can put your thumb in there and it's decently locked in. You know, it still can move, which I do like, but because it has to go up, it's not just like it's slipping and sliding around the blade. And so this grip is very good and very useful. My main issue with this is honestly I don't do this grip very much. A lot of times I do a lot of cardboard cutting, and so this grip, if I cut like that, while I do get a lot of leverage on this blade, this cardboard is going to run through my whole finger and be very uncomfortable. So I'll do a hammer grip like this, which is still very comfortable. I guess a little bit of a complaint with this compared to the Sebenza. I don't mean to make this a Umnumzaan versus Sebenza comparison, but at least with the pinch grip, this one isn't as good. Now, it's not bad. The good thing about the pinch grip is you can pretty much do it with any knife, but what that is, I basically put my thumb on the pivot, I choke up with my pointer, with my middle finger, and then I lay my pointer finger kind of right on this choil area, and that feels pretty good. This blade shape probably isn't the best for a pinch grip, but still, it's not bad in the pinch grip, but the Sebenza is better just because this choil is a little bit bigger, and you can go like this and really get a comfortable grip. Honestly, with the Sebenza, I've done cardboard cutting where I put my whole finger up here and I can still use it effectively like that because the blade is trying to move back like this and you are pushing forward. So there isn't really the danger of cutting yourself. I have never done it, but I guess if you are, be careful with that. But overall, the Umnumzaan ergos are pretty good. If you're thinking ergos in different grips, yeah, it feels great like this. Saber grip, this jimping is very good. I really like the fine jimping because you can move your thumb on it. It's not like gripping your thumb very hard, but you still do get a little bit of traction. So very comfortable like this. Also, I guess the pocket clip personally isn't really a hot spot in this grip or in this grip, but there is sometimes where you can make it a hot spot. Like if I, you guys can't see this, but if I put my middle finger right on this clip when I grip it, let me see if I can do that. Yeah, when I do that, I can get a hot spot out of that pocket clip, but the truth is, my hand just doesn't really fall that way when I first pick the knife up. So overall, the Umnumzaan ergonomics are very comfortable for me, and I really like that. For the carry of this knife, very simple. The Chris Reeve pocket clip, which a bunch of people like to change these out. I really don't understand that because even though, yes, they are not the best looking thing in the world, this, in my opinion, is my favorite and most functional pocket clip that I own. I guess it could be an issue if your pocket clip gets caught on a lot of things because that could get caught on stuff, but it does have this double retention point, which basically it has like a perfect amount of tension and this big ramp, so it's easy to slide in the pocket, and it also holds it in the pocket better with that extra retention point, and it carries fine where you have a lot to grab onto, and it is very easy. So overall, the carry of this is great. The weight of it still is a pretty hefty knife, but in jeans, I have no issues with it at all. Overall, the carry of the Umnumzaan is just fine, very similar to how a Sebenza 21 would carry. But also for the next category, for the action of this. And the action of the Umnumzaan, it's one of those things where I feel like a bunch of people, I've seen this kind of on forums recently, they first get an Umnumzaan and they're like, man, I'm just not a fan of this thing. It is not a very good action. It's very hard to play with and my thumb really hurts. My thought about that, one, if you're going to get a Chris Reeve knife, you should never go into getting one thinking that it's going to be fun to play with, and the Umnumzaan stands for that, but it still isn't as bad of an action as a lot of people think, and it's really just takes some getting used to. So one, this glass breaker, not a front flipper. I can break the detent with it, but no, you're just not going to do that. That would probably be very painful too if you're going to do it, because that point's kind of digging into you. But anyway, the issues with the action, what you need to do to overcome them, you can't do it like a basic thumb stud where you move like that. Let me show you a knife, or I don't know, this is Spyderco. Basically, this knife is one that you move like that, and that's how you flick it best. And so it's one of those things where this action, it's not your standard thumb stud or thumb hold deployment. You basically just have to follow the path that this titanium takes. So that's a good guideline. You know, it kind of curves up just a little bit. So you're basically just moving your thumb from here pretty much straight up like that. And I can do that with no wrist at all. And it is a pretty good action. When I first took it apart to take the lanyard off, I don't really even think I cleaned it. I just left that Chris Reeve grease on there, and it's probably wore out since then, but still, the action is good. I can flick it out like that just fine. These thumb studs, I like them. They don't provide the best grip, but they still are. They're smooth and they work, and I probably like them a little bit more than the Sebenza thumb studs, just because these things are a little bit on the sharp side. It's not that big of an issue to me because I take them I open them going like this, you know, I bring it down here. A bunch of people stick their thumb like that and try and do that, and that would hurt your thumb. But the way I take it, it doesn't really hurt my finger, but I do like these a little bit more than the Sebenza ones. Oh, and also these, the little rubber O-rings around the thumb studs. If you're wondering what those are for, they are for, I think that they make the thumb studs work a little bit better if you are in a wet environment, and also it does give a pretty silent opening. I feel like when the Chris Reeve grease runs off, it makes it a little bit of a louder deployer, but I guess it can be a little bit stealthy with those thumb studs. But overall, the action is good. The access to the lock bar, a bunch of people say it hurts their finger. That's probably because they're taking it straight up on this corner like that, and that is not the most comfortable. But what you can do, because it's such a wide area that you can close it with, you can just take your thumb, the meat of it, and then I'm kind of messing up here. How do I do this? Just kind of take the meat of your thumb and close it like that, and it is very useful and very easy. But you can definitely just use just the normal tip of your thumb like you usually would close a knife. Just, I guess, over time that could rip up just the pad of your thumb, kind of like the thumb stud does. So for value, $450 for this knife. I am personally happy with that. I feel like it's really good. If you have never seen the Umnumzaan, you just watched this whole video and then you first found out that it was $450. I'm sorry if that price scares you a little bit, but compared to a plain Sebenza 21 or just a plain Sebenza for $450, I feel like this is a great value. I'm really happy with it. And you can also pick these up used. Now, the Umnumzaan prices used aren't that big of a drop as the Nkosi prices or the Sebenza prices, so keep that in mind. But also, that's because the Umnumzaan is in pretty high demand right now, so just the prices aren't dropping much. I bet that you could probably get one lightly used for $400 on the secondary market. Also, keep in mind, Chris Reeve knives don't drop very much in price because they offer the spa treatment, and so even if it has some little bit of snail trails, you can send it back to Chris Reeve knives for free. You just pretty much have to pay shipping, and then you can pretty much get it looking brand new again. So if the blade is mint, the price won't drop that much, so keep that in mind. So I guess that's going to do it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. So far, I'm really impressed with the Umnumzaan, and I really do like it, and I'm excited to get some more use on it. So thank you guys for watching. First, before I wrap this up, be on the lookout for an Umnumzaan versus Sebenza video, and also a video that was suggested to me by a viewer that I want to do is a video where can the Gale Bradley 2 hang with the big boys? Can it hang with the Sabenza and an Umnumzaan and see really how that compares? I think that'll be a really fun video because I always hype up the Gale Bradley 2 and I'm going to see if it can really actually compare to them. Probably won't be like hard use testing that I'm going to do, but at least just a talk through video talking about the advantages and disadvantages of both. But we are at that 20-minute mark, so I just want to say thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one.